What's going on, guys? We are out in the shop for a product overview / install video on one of our most sold products, our billet battery terminals. And it's one of our best selling products because it's one of the best upgrades you can make to your vehicle if you are going to be adding a bunch of accessories. Not only for cleanliness under the hood, but also for better connections overall. I brought Garrett, our lead engineer, out here because we've got a lot of options and I'm going to need his help going over everything. So Garrett, let's start over here. I can see that we've got our basic terminal kit all laid out and a couple other options for some different kits. What do we got going on?
In our basic terminal, you'll get our 6061 CNC machine positive and negative terminal. These are designed to fit SAE standard battery lugs and all the necessary hardware that comes with them. So a main 3/8 bolt to attach any of your main power wires, some 1/4-20 hookups for all your accessories, and a nice clean battery boot to cover it all up to make sure you don't short anything out once it's installed.
And then it looks like we've got some other ones depending on applications. So certain applications will require additional pieces?
Yeah, so some of the newer vehicles have some extra sensors on there that didn't work with our original kit, so we've made sure that those guys are taken care of, and we've gone and created some new billet bling, which would be our TS1. That takes care of you on your negative side, and as well as our negative distribution block to make sure you still get all the same connections even with some extra sensors on your vehicle.
Sweet. Now in some applications, you are required to modify your existing terminal wiring. That's going to be done with either a compression style lug or a solder style lug. And we've got a couple options over there. Garrett, tell me what we've got at that end of the table.
So for your compression and solder lugs, the reason we supply those is not everyone has their own wire crimping tools at home. So these are going to be your alternative options to make it easier for you to install these. Our solder lugs, they use heat to melt the solder to give you a strong bond between the wires. But sometimes in the engine bay, things can be a little tight and you're not really comfortable using a torch or heat in your engine bay, which is why we also have the option of our compression lugs. Those use a tapered style thread to lock onto your wires, making sure your wire's not going anywhere, and you also don't have to worry about that heat in your engine bay.
And don't worry guys, we are going to go over an install on both of those to give you a more close-up example of how those get installed and make your life that little bit easier. It looks like we've also got an additional add-on for a fuse kit here. Garrett, tell me about that.
So what we've gone and done is also created multiple different sizes of fuse kits just to make sure that you're feeling extra secure when isolating your bigger accessories like winches, or maybe you have a really strong compressor or anything like that. If you're ever worried about them shorting out, just go ahead and install one of these F500 or F300 fuse kits in between the main power wire to that accessory, and if it ever shorts out, you know that the rest of your accessories and battery are doing just fine.
Now we're going to start the install portion of this by showing you how to install one of our basic kits. So like we said before, this is our basic system. Each application will be a little bit different, but we provide instructions for your application specifics, and this is just going to give you that idea, those little tips and tricks. All right, so we've cleared our workspace and we've got our terminals with the hardware pre-installed. Garrett, tell the people why that is important to do and why we did that, with what sizes, etc.
Even though you're going to be installing a lot of your accessories once your terminal is on the battery, we just recommend applying all your anti-seize and installing all your bolts before your terminals end up on the battery, so you don't lose anything, and it just keeps you a little bit more organized when installing everything.
That makes perfect sense. So let's talk about what our sizes are and what pieces they're pre-installing on this billet battery terminal.
So starting from the back of the terminal, you're going to have your two 1/4-20 positions here. Those will provide you with contact points for a lot of your light, 8-pillar lights or other light bar and accessories. We do have on the top a 5/16 bolt, so again, another size for other bigger eyelets and stuff like that. And then our main 3/8 battery connection is going to be through the terminal on both sides. That's where you're going to try and connect your main vehicle power wire or your main vehicle ground and stuff like that. This front square bolt is going to be our square battery bolt and retaining nut. We do recommend using 2 1/2-inch wrenches on both sides of that bolt when installing it. That way you don't cause any leaks around your battery stud.
We've also got our negative battery post here. You've got one of these in the C2 kit. Garrett, tell me what this is for.
So some of our vehicles actually use a factory style connection. If you don't want to cut any of your factory wire, they mount to a negative post like that. That will sit right on top of our negative terminal and make it so you don't even have to worry about modifying any of your factory wiring. We like to give people the option of that in either install.
Excellent. All right, our battery terminals are set up and we are ready to go. Now let's pretend you are the guy who needs to modify his factory terminal wiring. We're going to jump over it. We're going to get our lugs set up, both solder and compression, and show you how those guys work. All right, first things first, we are going to talk about the compression style lug, as this is the one that most people are choosing. It's the easiest to do. You don't have to worry about heat or anything like that. So Garrett, talk to me about what tools we need for a compression style lug.
So for this specific walnut compression lug that we'll be installing today, we're going to want a 9/16 wrench, a screwdriver to tighten down the main eyelet once you have the nut installed, and then obviously your stripped back wiring. We've already gone ahead and stripped this wiring. In normal instructions recommend 7/8, but we found greater success if you strip it back that extra 1/8 inch to make it 1 inch, so you have a little bit of wire protruding out the top of the nut.
That is a pro tip, guys. Again, we're gonna stress that 1 inch of exposed wire is the sweet spot. If you're looking up install instructions from a manufacturer for someone else, they might only say 7/8. We have found in all of our installs that a 1 inch section provides a much easier install for this compression style lug.
Yes, sir.
All right, Garrett, show me how it's done.
So first thing first, your wire is going to be on your vehicle, so we're going to want to make sure we install our heat shrink over the wire first so it doesn't bite you in the butt when you're done installing your compression lug and your heat shrink doesn't fit over your lug anymore. So
Been there.
go ahead and install that heat shrink. Leave yourself with plenty of room to work on the end of the wire. The next thing you're going to want to do is install the actual compression nut itself. That's going to go right over the top of the wire. Sometimes twisting it as installing it down the wire helps get all those strands in. So here we are again, we've got the nut installed on the end of the wire. You can see we've got that extra 1/8 inch that we found to be the ultimate success when installing these compression lugs on the end of your wire. So as long as you see this extra wire sticking out the top of the nut, you should be fine when installing everything else. So from there, we're gonna go ahead and start threading our eyelet onto the top of it. Let the thread start to bite a little bit before grabbing your wrench and your screwdriver. So we're gonna hold the bottom nut with our wrench and use a screwdriver from there to turn the eyelet. Once you got everything on there nice and tight, you should have a secure connection that won't come off, and you're ready to put on your heat shrink. So go ahead and cover up the majority of your lug. We recommend going right to about that black line before torching on your heat shrink and sealing it all up for the install. So with the heat shrink on, we're going to use the help of a torch or a heat gun of some kind and lightly go over your heat shrink, making sure you're securing both ends, keeping that connection nice and watertight for all the off-roading that you're going to be doing in the future.
Perfect, nice and clean, nice and easy. We're gonna get rid of our compression style lug and let's talk about the solder style. Okay. All right, Garrett, we've gathered our solder style lug and some different tools for this install. Tell me what we got.
So for this one, you're gonna want some vice grips, and we recommend having a helping hand around. The reason we recommend the vice grips is because your helping hand's gonna be holding on to the actual eyelet itself, supporting it while you heat it up and insert the wire. And if you use vice grips, then they don't have to worry about squeezing the eyelet. They just have to worry about holding the eyelet and supporting it for you. So once you've got your eyelet supported, hand it off to your friend to go ahead and hold it for you. Once you've got your helping hand going, we're gonna lightly start heating up the end of our solder lug there. And while heating up the lug, we're gonna start twisting and inserting the wire that we'd like to bond. Once it's installed, remember that the eyelet is going to be hot, so make sure that you don't go ahead and grab that eyelet, but you can go ahead and release your vice grips and go ahead and slide that heat shrink down. Again, the eyelet will be hot, so make sure you don't touch it with any of your fingers. Okay, so with your solder lug installed, go ahead and slide down your heat shrink. Go ahead and use the same method for either heat gun or torch. Give it some light heat until it go ahead and seals up the end of your wire for any watertight off-roading adventures you have coming in the future.
All right, now that we've shown you guys how to install the compression and the solder style lugs, let's show you guys how to get these on your vehicle. All right, we're gonna start, well, while our solder cools down, we are going to show you how to install this compression style onto our battery on the positive side. Garrett, what tools do we need to install our billet battery terminals onto your battery terminals?
We recommend having a rubber mallet or some kind of dead blow to help seat the terminal onto the actual battery stud, as well as 2 1/2-inch wrenches when tightening the bottom battery bolt.
All right, I'm gonna hand the tools on over to you. We need our billet battery terminal, our mallet, and it looks like included in our kit, we've got some additional little pieces. What are these guys?
So we go ahead and supply a felt ring, a red and a negative one, just to help if you do have any leaks or anything coming from that post. It'll keep your billet battery terminal isolated for any lead acid or any leaks and stuff like that come out, keeping your billet looking nice and shiny for all the future. As well as we provide these battery boots to make sure you don't have any shorts when working in your engine bay, and make sure that everything looks nice and clean and tidied up once it's installed.
Right on.
So when installing this positive terminal, we're going to go ahead and put our filter washer down first. We like to recommend finger tightening our 5/16 battery bolt here at the bottom at first. You don't want to go any more past that really, otherwise you're going to start closing the gap on the actual stud itself. So once you've got this finger tight, we're going to go ahead and set it down on our terminal. This is where the rubber mallet comes into play. Remember, we only recommend tapping this. We're not hammering it in, we're not going ham on it, we're just giving it some nice taps to make sure that it bites to the actual stud of it here. So we'll recommend right here at the bottom a couple tappy taps. That'll make sure our terminal no longer wants to rotate, even with our bottom battery bolt only being finger tight. Once your terminal is set down nice and tight, we can use both of our 1/2-inch wrenches and go ahead and lock that into place. So the reason we do recommend 1/2-inch wrenches, 2 of them for this, is that it'll help prevent any leaks coming from the actual stud from any unwanted torque when installing this. So now that terminal is go ahead and locked down. It's not going to come anywhere, and you can go ahead and enjoy it, start hooking up any accessories to that you want.
Now that the battery terminal is mounted on your battery, we're going to show you how to install your compression style wire, the wire that we did previously, onto our battery terminal. But we are also going to include, if you wanted to be the guy who needed some extra peace of mind, say he's installing a winch or a high capacity, whatever it might be, with our Fues Kit. So we've got our 500 amp Fues Kit. I'm going to get out of Garrett's way, and he's going to show you how to put this on the battery.
So first things first, we're going to go ahead and put our little eyelet insulator over our wire initially. Next thing we're going to do is grab our 5/16 battery bolt with our plastic isolator. We're going to make sure that goes in. The plastic isolator goes on the opposite side that you'll be installing the fuse. So we'll put it on the inside of the battery in this case. Next thing to go on that wire will be our 500 amp fuse. Then we'll go ahead and install our eyelet, making sure we lock it all on with our supplied lock washer and 5/16 nut.
Now that we've got our terminal and our Fues Kit installed, now would be the time that you'd be installing the supplied battery boot. But since you needed that extra peace of mind for your accessory and installed this Fues Kit, you are going to have to modify this boot just a smidgen. There are included instructions, but we're going to have Garrett show you how it's done.
So basically we're just going to want to kind of clear up a window on this side. So we're going to cut straight across the top like so. Go. So we're just going to go ahead and relieve this window right over here, cutting across the top and then a single cut down the side. You can use scissors, you could use some wire cutters, really anything. This rubber on these isolator boots is really soft, so it should be something really easily cut that you don't totally have to worry about. So now we've got that window released, we're just going to go ahead and install it right over the top of our terminal. And now you're all isolated for all of your future endeavors.
Now that the positive side is done, our solder connection is nice and cool. We are going to show you how to install the negative terminal along with the negative terminal stud in case your application does require that. Garrett, what's first?
So just like our positive side, we're going to start with our black felt washer. We're going to go ahead and put that down over our battery post first. Then we're going to grab our terminal. Remember, we're going to finger tighten our battery bolt at the bottom here first just to make sure to promote any extra biting when installing our terminal. We're going to lay it over there. Remember, we do recommend tapping this down to make sure it bites. If it doesn't bite when you tap it down, then we can start tightening our battery bolt in the bottom. We want to slowly tighten that until we get it to bite. Once it's actually installed on the stud, then we can continue to tighten it down with both of our 1/2-inch wrenches. In this case, we are actually going to end up tightening our battery bolt a little. Here's our negative stud on this battery. It appears to have a little bit of extra slack in there. So we're going to grab our 1/2-inch wrenches, tighten down this battery bolt a little bit, make sure it close up our tolerances.
And this is perfect because sometimes battery manufacturers have these little bit of variances. Not every single terminal is going to be exactly the same. Little variances like this are going to pop up. We do QC all of our terminals to make sure that they are in spec. So if you do see that little bit of extra play, just a little audible. You just got to tighten that up just a smidgen more and you're ready to go.
So with that tightened right up, I can tell now that we'll be fine once we give the terminal a couple taps. So I'm going to give it a couple taps and then we'll lock it onto the post with our 1/2 inch wrenches again. Cool. With that locked in, not rotating anymore, I'm going to go ahead and grab my 1/2 inch wrenches one more time, supporting on both the nut and the bolt side of things so we don't put any stress on the actual battery stud. Give it a little bit quarter rotation until everything stiffens up. And now our negative side is locked in there, not going anywhere, just like our positive side. With our terminal installed now, we're going to go ahead and grab our cool off solder lug and install it onto this terminal. Again, we're going to recommend using your 3/8 bolt, so we're going to go ahead and remove that from our terminal. With the bolt removed, we're going to go ahead and flip it around to make it easier access if you ever need to remove any of this wiring on this side. We're going to install our eyelet, throw our washer back on there, and lock it down with our other 3/8 nut.
Couldn't be any easier. Now, I know you guys are going to say, well, what about the negative terminal stud? And if you guys are one of those applications that does need this, Garrett's going to show us how it goes on.
It's really simple. It just goes right here on top of the terminal with the 5/16 bolt. So let me go ahead and remove that 5/16 bolt so we can install this negative stud. With the bolt removed, we're going to go ahead and put the stud right over top. We're going to hold it back down with the same 5/16 bolt in the same spot again. Once locked down, you're good to go. You can reuse your same negative stock battery stud style, or again, you can choose to cut that off and go with either our solder or compression style lugs.
And last but not least,
we've got our black cover, and that'll fit right over top of this stud as well, so don't worry, even if you guys are wanting to run that without modifying anything, it'll still be exposed and easy to connect.
Now, our billet battery terminals are installed on the battery. But I know you guys are going to say, well, wait, I've got a hole here that's not being used and I've got leftover hardware. What's that for? Again, this is a base kit used in many of our application specific kits. On certain applications, we are going to use that hole and this hardware. Garrett, tell me when or why we would use that hole.
So we've gone ahead and just added an extra 1/4 threaded hole on the top. That is just to support some of those more specific vehicle applications. You will be told in the instructions if you need to use that hole, and if you're not told about those specific holes or if you have extra bolts, then it wasn't needed for your specific installation.
So don't worry, that is included. We know about it. You guys don't have to stress. You did it right. Now, if you guys are paying attention, which I know you were, you're all going to say, well, you guys weren't using anti-seize. There's a tube of anti-seize included in the kit. We know, we were just doing this for demonstrative purposes, but we highly recommend you use this. Garrett, tell them why it's important.
So we supply the anti-seize in the kit to make sure you don't have any galling when installing the stainless hardware into the aluminum. And then that also as well, when you go to remove or add other accessories on later, the bolts come out with ease, but still hold your accessories nice and tight.
That concludes our overview and install video of our billet battery terminals. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us at help@sdhqoffroad.com. The sales team's there, and we have very easy access to Garrett if you guys stump us. Head on over to our website and get a set of billet battery terminals for yourself. Like always, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next one.